Hey guys, welcome back to my backyard. Now there's an old saying I like: the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. Now I've stopped growing all annuals like tomatoes, peppers, and cucumbers. Even though they bear fruit really quickly, like in the matter of a few months, they just take too much effort. So I've settled on just having my fruit trees, which take much less effort and give fruit year after year. The only downside to fruit trees is that they could take many years to start producing. Today I want to talk about which trees give the fruit the fastest, because that's what everyone wants, right? Now, no tree will give you fruit in the matter of months like a small annual plant like tomatoes will, but when some trees take 7 to 10 years, I see a tree that takes maybe 2 years a fast producer. And I just want to note, I'm talking about trees that are purchased as like 1, 3, or 7 gallon pots, which is the size most people buy fruit trees as. Obviously, if you spend hundreds of dollars on like a 25 gallon tree, you're going to get fruit pretty much right away. So this list will all be trees that I've grown in my backyard, and I'll let you know which trees that have produced the fastest for me. So first, some quick notes on what's doing worst in this category. I bought my Jaboticaba over there in November 2020. Got my Sapote in February 2021. And I got my big jackfruit tree, which is growing really nice, in December 2020. All of them were 3 gallon trees, and they all still probably have at least a year from getting fruit on all of them. So those will all take at least like a good 5 years. But let's get to the ones that gave me fruit the fastest. So let's start with one of my favorite trees, and one that I wish I got sooner, my Pickering Mango tree. Now mangoes can be hit or miss depending on the variety. Some could take a while to produce, but others, like the Pickering here, can produce pretty fast. I got this in February 2022 in what I think they called a 3 gallon pot, but you can see this is a brand new grafted tree, so it's more like a 1 gallon size tree. It started growing pretty fast, and in the very next spring it actually flowered, but didn't hold any fruit. This past spring, 2 years after I got it, it flowered again as a bigger tree and actually held on to 5 mature mangoes. This tree should continue to be a powerhouse producer for many years to come, and it's a great choice for a quick producing tree. The next fast producing tree is my Sapodilla, but specifically the Silas wood variety. Like the mangoes, different varieties can take longer to produce than others, like my other macaque Sapodilla that I actually got before this Silas wood, which still hasn't produced yet. But I got this Silas wood in June 2021 in a 3 gallon pot, and picked my first fruit in March 2023, so not even 2 years later. Later that summer, I ended up getting a ton more fruit, and now this tree is pretty much constantly bearing fruit. The Silas wood is also a dwarf tree, so it shouldn't get much bigger than a big bush, maybe like 6 or 7 feet tall max. But as you can see here, it's still like not even 4 feet tall. Definitely one of the big winners in my yard. Next up is the Loquat. I got this tree in a 3 gallon pot in May 2022. This tree has just exploded in growth ever since then. It actually flowered while still in a pot that winter, only like 8 months after I got it, and then shockingly held on to a few fruit that I got to eat in spring 2023, less than a year after I got it. It grew a ton over the following year and produced again this past spring, making another nice crop. Loquats are so delicious, and the tree is also really nice looking, which is why it's the only fruit tree that I have in front of my house. The next tree, although technically not a tree, is the Papaya. I bought this little red lady variety tree back in November 2018, and it instantly started growing like crazy. Less than 1 year later, by October 2019, the tree was loaded with fruit, and I picked the first fully ripe and delicious fruit. I even later grew a papaya tree from a seed from one of my fruit and got fruit from that new tree in only 14 months, which is pretty crazy. If you want fruit fast from a tree, I don't think anything will beat papaya. Next up is the Jamaican Cherry, also known as the strawberry tree, or formerly the Muntingia calabura. This ridiculous tree is probably one of the fastest growing trees in existence, known to grow up to 10 feet in 1 year. I I got my tree in February 2022 as this tiny little twig. It flowered only 2 months later, and I was picking lots of little fruit only a year later. This past summer, I picked hundreds of the little berries, but I decided to cut down the tree recently because it was just growing out of control, way bigger than I had space for. This definitely is not the tree for tight spaces, but if you have the room for it, it could be a real winner. The next tree I want to talk about is the fig. I got these 2 tiny fig cuttings in September 2018. Figs can't grow in the ground here in Florida because of root knot nematodes in our soil, so I kept them in pots. Only 1 year later, the trees were completely full of some of the most delicious fruit I've grown. These ripe figs are like little balls of honey. Just so delicious. If you have a tight space, I highly recommend fig trees because of how well they grow in pots and of course how fast they produce fruit. Finally, the last tree I want to mention is the mulberry. Now this tree is in my video of my biggest failures because it eventually got the worst infestation of scale I've ever seen, and I ended up getting rid of it, but it did produce fruit very quickly. I got this little twig of a tree in October 2018. I kept it in a pot the entire time and it grew very fast, giving me a bunch of nice little sweet fruit in March 2021. While it did take 2.5 years for me, I got it as a little twig, so if you buy a mulberry tree as like a 3-gallon tree, you can probably take off a good 6 months to a year from that timeline. The nice thing about mulberries, unlike almost every other tree on this list, maybe except for figs, is that they can be grown in basically any climate, not just tropical climates like here in South Florida. So that's my list of quickly producing fruit trees. Let me know in the comments if I missed anything, and thanks for watching.